For starters, the Paraguayan people in general are just very non-violent, friendly people, and you just get a different vibe walking around. I remember, being in Bogota, in the tourist area, and then as soon as it got a little bit dark, you could feel a change in the air. It's nothing like what you find in places like Mexico, where there's, organized cartels that are at war with other cartels. Hey everyone, my name's Paul from Plan B Paraguay. Today we're going to be talking about safety and crime in Paraguay. So what I noticed is a lot of people, and even me before I came to Paraguay, you think of South America as all the same. You see shows on Netflix like Narcos and all that stuff, and you assume the whole place is just like a wild, lawless place with drug dealers and crime and kidnappings, but really, it really depends on which country you're in, and Paraguay is really nothing like that. So let me tell you why. So when you look up the statistics of the least safe to the most safest countries in South America, what you'll find is that Paraguay is right there near the top. So there's really two countries that are considered safer in South America than Paraguay, and that's Chile and Uruguay. And part of the reason is, these are very developed first world wealthy countries. So it makes sense that they're going to be perhaps safer than the rest of Latin America. But next on that list, you usually have Paraguay in third place. And even though it's a much poorer and more developing country, it's still relatively safe compared to many other countries in Latin America. Especially I'm thinking Colombia, Brazil, and even Argentina have many parts which are quite dangerous. But what we'll talk about today is, although Paraguay isn't perfect, it is actually quite safe. And today we'll talk about some of the tips and things to keep in mind if you're thinking about living in Paraguay or just spending some time here and visiting. So first, let's talk about narco activity in Paraguay. So there is there is a small amount of narco activity, but it's nothing like the organized crime and the cartels that you get in places like Mexico, where you hear all the horrible stuff on the news. So there's two main reasons why this doesn't happen in Paraguay. The first is there's no market in Asunción. The main users are in the wealthier countries. They're in the United States, they're in Europe. So the narcos aren't producing drugs to move into Asunción because the population isn't really wealthy enough here to support much of a market. The second is like the routes of distribution. So a lot of the drugs like cocaine are produced to the north of Paraguay in places like Colombia. They go up all the way through Central America into places like United States. There's no reason really to send the drugs south into Paraguay, which is in the middle of the continent, because that's not really a very common shipping route. Now there is a little bit of drugs that passes down the Paraguay River that goes all the way out to the ports in Buenos Aires, where it can be sent to other parts of the world, but that really has very little effect in what's going on in Asunción. It's nothing like what you find in places like Mexico, where there's organized cartels that are at war with other cartels. And so what Paraguayans say is there's actually a town in the north east side of Paraguay on the Brazilian border called Juan Pedro Caballero, and that is known as probably the sketchiest part of Paraguay. And if you were then to just cut off that little town from Paraguay, the national crime statistics would drop significantly. And so here's this little place on the other side of the country that's really the reason for a lot of the crime that comes up on the statistics. And if you look on the map, you can see this place is very far away from Asunción. And so if that area wasn't part of Paraguay, the statistics would be much less, and Paraguay could probably be one of the safest countries in the world. So let's talk about, if you were going to be the victim of a crime in Paraguay, what's likely to happen and what are the sort of things that you can do to avoid it. So generally, if there's any crime in Paraguay, it's going to be non-violent. It's probably going to be a couple guys drinking. You might be walking past them in front of some house, or it's going to be two guys on a motorbike, and they're going to jump off the motorbike. They're going to try and ask you for your phone, and you're probably going to give them your phone, and that's going to be it. There's no real sort of kidnapping or any sort of organized crime type activities that you see in other parts of South America. What it comes down to with me specifically, I do want to raise a family, in the next few years, at least start. And so if I didn't feel Paraguay wasn't a safe place to start a family, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't try and raise a family in Buenos Aires, in Rio. I wouldn't try to raise a family in Bogota. But in Paraguay, it is safe. It's given me what I feel is like the assurance that, I can raise a family here and I will feel like I'm a good dad. I'm not feeling like I'm raising my kids somewhere dangerous where they could get hurt or something bad could happen to them. So here are some of the tips that we can recommend so that when you're in Paraguay and you're in Asunción, how to stay safe. So the first place that I would avoid at night is downtown. So downtown is right near the riverbank in Asunción. It has beautiful architecture. It's a little bit run down. It's still very much the center of commerce in Asunción, and it's very busy during the day. However, at night, you'll find there's no one there. And so, like any place in Latin America or other places, if no one's around at night, that's probably a good reason for you not to be there either. So right now in Asunción, they're actually going through a revitalization of that area. It's a lot more well lit. They're reconstructing all the roads. There's more security guards, but I still wouldn't recommend necessarily walking around that area at night. And part of the reason is right near the Costanera, which is the riverbank in Asunción, there's a settlement there which is basically a favela of Asunción. So it's very rudimentary houses with people that are quite poor live there. And because that settlement is right next to downtown Asunción effectively, some of those people will come over and they will commit petty crimes in the city at night. So that would be the first place I would avoid. The second place I would avoid is just, walking around poor suburbs or poor cities at night in general, especially, if you look foreign. So I would say it's not like, again, Paraguayans are out hunting for expats or anything to steal from. But if you're, an expat, people are automatically going to consider you're pretty wealthy because realistically you are probably pretty wealthy relative to a normal Paraguayan. And again, if there's a couple guys drinking at the front of their house or a couple guys, maybe they've had a few drinks or whatever, they're just driving around on their motorcycle and they see you, they might think, well, here's a chance to grab someone's wallet, grab someone's phone, and they might take that opportunity. The truth is, however, there's not really much reason to be in these places in the middle of the night. So ask the Plan B team, 90% of our clients, we live in the newer developing part of Asunción. So where I would say this part is if you think about Paseo La Galeria or Shopping del Sol, which are the two main shopping centers in Asunción, maybe a circle of about, a couple kilometers radius around that area there, at least for us in our experience, that's going to be completely safe. That is the area where a lot of the wealthy Paraguayans live. And what you'll find is quite interesting here, a more wealthy Paraguayan family, they'll have their mansion, plenty in this area, and they'll actually have a security guard. They'll have a little box out the front, and it's just an empty, plastic box with a chair in it, and there'll actually be a security guard just sitting in that chair. And so if you're walking in these suburbs or around that area, you walk maybe every 50 meters or so, you'll see there's another security guard. Now, obviously, they're there to protect the homeowner's property. They're going to call the police. They're usually armed, so they'll kind of protect anything that's going on in their street. So what I find particularly in the area that I mentioned, and maybe we can throw up sort of a map of where that is. You can walk at night. Me, for example, my family's in Australia, so it's opposite time zones. So many times it'll be midnight in Paraguay and I'll be calling my family where it's daytime. I'll be walking around the back streets. I have no problem at all walking around on my phone. Now, the other thing I also recommend if you're moving to Paraguay or even Latin America in general, there's kind of two different places you can stay. So you can hire like a residential type, like a house, what you could imagine in your country, or you can hire or rent an apartment. So usually what I recommend with clients and friends, if you're coming to Paraguay, the safest thing to rent at first is an apartment. And the reason is because all these apartments, besides the smallest ones, they'll have 24-hour security. So there'll be a guy there who's controlling who's getting in and out of the apartment, making sure no one's getting in, and he's making sure, your properties and your possessions are safe in the apartment. So if you're still a bit unsure about Latin America, South America, that's a very good first step to come here, get a nice, modern, safe, secure apartment. They're relatively cheap, much cheaper than probably what they are back home, and you're going to feel safe and secure there. The other benefit of these apartments as well is whenever you have a delivery, they'll collect your delivery, whether it's you're ordering some Uber Eats, maybe you're getting your Amazon delivered, whatever it could be. So you have someone who's always there, always watching over things, and it's not just you. The opposite of that, which I don't 100% recommend right away, is if you just rent a residential house in the middle of nowhere. Now again, 99% of Paraguayans are good people, but if you're living in a poorer neighborhood and you're the only foreign-looking person there, there might be some people that are going to consider, maybe when they're not home, I'll jump the fence and I'll see what they have. Probably have a nice laptop or a nice phone I can grab. And especially if you don't have if you're renting a residential house that doesn't have like high fences or anything, that could be a concern. So I'm not saying never have a nice residential house. Do it, but maybe not your first place you live here. Get to know what suburbs and cities around Asunción are safe. Choose one that's relatively safe. Don't just pick the random cheapest house in the middle of nowhere, because that might not be the safest for you. And so another thing to consider is Paraguay is very different from Dubai. In Dubai, it's all flashiness. It's look at my watch, look at my car, look at my clothes, all that. Paraguay is a very chill, understated place. There's people here that are multi-millionaires, maybe even billionaires, and you wouldn't know. Their clothes look nice and all that, but they're not rocking the flashiest watch, or they're not driving the latest supercar. They're a little bit more modest in public. One thing that you do see here as well that you don't see in many parts of the world is women walking by themselves at night. So especially in the newer part of Asunción, whether it's 11 p.m., midnight, you'll see women walking, maybe they're finishing work, you'll see women waiting for the bus, grabbing an Uber, going somewhere. And so it's quite common to see women out and about at night. So although we talked about some things to watch out for and potential crimes that are possible in Paraguay, really in our experience, it's nothing like some of these other countries. I mean, for starters, the Paraguayan people in general are just very non-violent, friendly people, and you just get a different vibe walking around. I remember, being in Bogota, in the tourist area, and then as soon as it got a little bit dark, you could feel a change in the air. You could see almost like some people, not everyone, but they had that look in their eye. I'm not the most experienced traveler in the world, but my spider sense was kicking in. It was like, okay, time to get an Uber, time to get the hell out of here. I remember when I visited Rio, maybe I was a little bit naive living in Asunción, but I was walking down the beach in Rio and Copacabana. I had my caipirinha in my hand, just having a sip. I was listening to my podcast, just enjoying the sun. I pull my phone out of my pocket, about to change the podcast, and this Brazilian woman comes up to me. She's like, stop, no, don't do that. Put that away, be careful. I'm like, what is going on? I'm just trying to change my podcast, right? And I realized that, like I said, same continent, very different countries. So some of the norms in a place like Paraguay wouldn't apply to a place like Brazil. When I was in Colombia, Brazil, at a restaurant at night, don't just leave your phone on the table. Someone might run and grab it. In Paraguay, it's not a problem. Again, Colombia, Brazil, when you're in the Uber, it's hot and sometimes they won't put the aircon in the Uber, so you want to roll down the windows. Roll down the windows, playing on my phone, it's never a problem in Paraguay. Again, in Brazil, Colombia, the driver will say, no, don't do that. There'll be guys on motorcycles, they'll drive up, they'll reach in, they'll grab your phone. Paraguay is not perfect, but for South America, it's quite safe. And you'll see if you come here, you'll realize that, you can live a very safe, fun, and productive life here as well. The final point I just remembered is also families, yeah? So particularly families with children, what that's like. So here in Paraguay, you go to like an outdoor eating area, there'll be like a playground or something, and there's just kids running around everywhere, screaming, having a good time. Like there's none of this, you know, really sort of like overprotectiveness around children like there is maybe in other parts of the world. And I think part of it is there's just not anything in the psyche here. Like, you know, why would someone do something bad to a kid? Like that's almost unthinkable here. For families with younger kids, you know, there's none of the, you know, the horrible school shootings that we hear about in other parts of the world. In the high schools I hear there's just a lot less bullying. It's kind of like the Paraguayan culture. People are just more friendly and chill with each other. They're not maybe cutthroat as some other kids are. At least I remember when I was in high school. And also, there's just like common decency in the community. You see all the kids out, they're playing, the mums are watching each other's kids. You see kids playing out late at night, playing soccer. They're completely safe, you know, they're looked after and there's no issues there. So I hope that answers some of your questions about safety and crime in Paraguay. As you can see, it's not perfect, but it really is a great option for many people, and many people have been happy to move here. So if you'd like to learn more about Paraguay, first subscribe to our channel here. We're going to be producing more videos where you can learn more about what it's like to live in Paraguay and the residency process. And if you do want to take that next step, either as a Plan B residency, maybe things aren't great in your country, you need a backup option, we can help you with that. Or, you know, like me and the team at Plan B Paraguay, you want to live here full time and make this place your home, reach out to us and we'll be able to help you with that. If you look in the description of this video, there'll be a Calendly link. You can come, you can book a call with me and we can talk about if Paraguay will be a good fit for you as well. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.